Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It is that time of the month again where I go over the books that I finished this month. These will be all the books that I read in July because it's now August. It's also my birthday tomorrow and I'm kind of excited but then not excited because I'm getting older, but birthdays are always fun. So I'm in the middle on that, but yeah. So without further ado, let's get into my July wrap up. First book I read in July was Who's Got Your Back? And this one was a 3 out of 5 star for me. It was good. Um, it was very Christian based, and it was about building relationships, like men building relationships with other men. And I found that some of it didn't really apply to me because I have a lot of close relationships with my guy friends, and the way this was described was more for, I would say, like baby boomers or middle-aged men who are kind of closed off from their relationships with other men, and kind of like married couples. Not that all married couples are like this, but just kind of where a man and a woman spend all their time together and they don't, like the man doesn't spend as much time forming relationships with other men. So this would be a book that I would actually pass on to my dad. Not that he's like a loner or anything. My dad's actually a very friendly person and has a lot of guy friends, but I think that he would appreciate it from the aspect of the Christianity side to it. So I'm going to pass this on to him. The next book I finished in July was The Usurper King by Zeb Hardon. This one was quite a ride. I believe I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. This is the one where it was set in a future where Ted Bundy actually survived and ended up becoming the president. And they had to kind of try and figure out what to do. And they go on an attempt to assassinate him. It's very interesting. It's a little all over the place, and the ending kind of threw me for a loop, but but it was still interesting, and I'm glad I read this book. I will say, trigger warning for anybody that does not like animal cruelty. There is a game show on this where they have to sacrifice animals and read their entrails to tell the future. So if you don't like animal cruelty, you probably would not like this book. But that being said, it was interesting. I also did not know what to give this book for a genre. I was like, is this a thriller? Is it a comedy? Is it like, I don't know. I couldn't decide. And when I looked at other reviews on Goodreads, a lot of people also did not know what genre to put this in. So I can't really tell you what genre it is. But that would be my guess, is like comedy thriller. Anyway, check it out if you want to. The next book I actually read for a fellow Instagrammer. His book was called The War Remnants, and I'll show you it right here. It's a novella that he wrote before he's about, well, I think he's currently writing this series, but this is the novella to begin it off and kind of like set the tone. And I actually really liked this book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It was really interesting. It was set in like a fictional like desert land, but then there was a bunch of different factions that were all at war with each other, and there was like this really interesting magic system that they had to open like these gates, but like from inside themselves to force the magic out. And I think there's like 6 or 7 gates, and the 6th one is like the strongest one. It's really cool. Like the whole magic system is fascinating, and there's so much more that he can add to this and build on into the series. So I would actually be really excited to read this series. The only reason I gave it 4 out of 5 is because I felt like there wasn't enough of it. Like I wanted more, and I was looking forward to all the world building, and because it's a novella, it was so short. It was only about 130 pages, so you didn't really get that much. But I think that with this whole series coming out, I would be very happy to read the series, and I would look forward to it, honestly. The one other thing I didn't like about the book was that a lot of the names were kind of similar, and they all started with the same letter. So there'd be like a lot of names that started with A, and they kind of looked the same, so it was kind of hard to differentiate who was who. But other than that, I would really like to read the series. and learn more about the magic system and the world that he's started to build. The next book I read was The Curse of the Ancestors by Jamie James. This book I really enjoyed. It was about a kid who goes to visit his father at his veterinarian reserve. It's also set in Africa. And while he's visiting his father at the veterinary reserve, his father decides to tell him that there is this curse on their family that will kill the men off in the family after they reach the age of 50. And Jamie James has to find out a way to break the curse and like preserve their lives. So it's basically the adventure of Jamie James going through figuring out how to break this curse, building relationships along the way with other people, and just learning about his family's history and what they have done in the past and what he can do in the future to make it better. I would say that this book is very middle grade in the way that it reads, and it reminded me a lot of this series that I read when I was younger. It was a veterinary series where each different book was like the daughter and father going to help a different animal. But it's a little more intricate than that, but I do believe that this is very much a middle grade book. And I think that with a very artistic / cartoon-y like cover, I think this would grab really well with middle grade readers. And I would strongly suggest this for middle grade readers. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 because I think I would have loved this as a younger reader. I still loved it as a reader now. I just believe if I was younger reading it, I would have flew through it. And the last book that I read in July was The Grey Sisters by Joe Triggeari, and I loved this book. I gave this one a 4 out of 5. It was really good, and there were multiple perspectives. Pretty much, Joe, like when she does write books, she writes books in multiple perspectives. Well, so far out of the 2 books I've read by her, and the way she tells it is so fascinating because they always like tie together, and the characters are so unique in themselves. They're so very different, and it's interesting to see how she writes these characters that have such different thoughts and such different backgrounds. But this book started off with a very like jarring chapter right off the bat. So if I was reading this for like the first chapter challenge, I would have picked this up right away because I was drawn in on page like 4, and I kept reading it, and this book gave me it gave me like that creepy factor that you get. So like when you're watching a scary movie and you feel like there's somebody watching you, like that's what I felt like when reading this book. It's definitely a YA thriller. So like, yeah, I love books that can make me feel like creeped out and I'm all alone in the room and it's just like, oh, I love it. So this book is really good for that. I would honestly strongly recommend this book. It's a short read, less than 300 pages. Also, it's a signed copy, so that's pretty sweet. And this book is going to be going on my Joe Triggeari shelf, which only has 2 books right now, but the more she writes, the more of these I'm going to add to it. And this is the last book that I was supposed to read in the month of July, but I did not finish it, and that was Rise and Run by R.J. Plant. Now, it's not that I didn't finish it. I started it in July. I have finished it now, but I can't count it for my July wrap-up because I started reading it on July 31st. So I'm actually going to use this book in my Magical Readathon for the Newts, because one of the prompts is that you have to read the first book that comes to mind on your TBR, and this would be it because I didn't finish it on my July TBR. So this is the book that I'm using for that, and I've already finished it. So you will hear about this when I do my Newts wrap-up. I'm also going to be doing my Newts TBR this Thursday, so stay tuned for that. And that's it for my July wrap-up. I read as much as I could in July, being that I was also moving at the end of July, so it was a little difficult to read, but I managed to get 5 books? 5? 4 or 5? I can't count. I managed to get some books read in this month, and I'm pumped about that. And yeah, I'm also pretty much settled into the new apartment now, so I'll be able to give you guys a bookshelf tour. You can see all of Marcus's books on one side and all of my books on the other side, and some kind of blended in the middle, but we mainly kept them separate just because, but he's more proud of his shelves because they're all like fantasy and sci-fi, and Mine are contemporary and everything. So we're excited to do that. And yeah, I will be back at you with some newts this week. Thanks again for watching, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and keep on reading.